Many people tell me they want to write a book. And I look at them and I think, why do you want to write a book? It's a lot of work. You've got to lay yourself out on the line, and you're exposed to so much criticism, I think, yeah, or praise. You know, either way, you leave yourself open to whatever people may say about you. So, why write a book? I think in my case, it's because I have to write. I love to write. There's something about writing that just fulfills me. At 77 years old, I have written 2 books. I have a career of columns behind me, a career of being a therapist behind me, a career of being a teacher behind me. I've done a lot with my life. And I have a lot of interesting things to say about life. I really got hit with the idea that my life might be over after John died, because though he was 23 years older than I and got frail and got sick, and I took care of him, I became just a caregiver, I think. I lost myself while I was taking care of him. Not that I didn't want to take care of him, I certainly did, but I had to give up so many of my interests at that time, and it took a long time for him to make his journey out of this world. And I wanted to hold on to him too as long as I could. And it was a sad time for me when he was gone. It felt like I had lost myself. It was like somebody had taken a cleaver and cut me in half, and there was half of me gone, and nothing was left but these raw feelings. I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know how to act. I had a different status. I was that ugly word, a widow. And I didn't want to be a widow. I wanted to be me, but I didn't know who me was anymore. And before I knew it, I had decided to write a book on what? Rebuilding my life, because that's what I was doing, suffering loss and rebuilding my life. But not just to show that I could rebuild my life, but to help other people, other widows particularly, in the process, because it is really a very hard thing to lose someone you love and to be left behind. So as I was writing the book, suddenly I realized I'm writing a book on aging. So changed directions a little bit. I decided to go back to the 50s, not the 1950s, but the time when I was 50 years old, and use that as a model, because, well, most people, when they hit 50, they start thinking about the rest of their life, or what's left of the rest of their life. There's a little bit of anxiety at 50. I remember feeling it myself. I was thinking, oh my God, I've lived a half a century. There's only another half a century to go. Half a century isn't enough time. I thought when I was a kid that to be 50 years old would be ancient, but it isn't. To be 77 years old, as I am now, isn't ancient either. It's learning the secret of living is to accept, I think, where you are and to go ahead and live till you die. Otherwise, If you don't, you're going to die while you're living. Anyway, I found a humorous essay I had written when I was 65 about the menopausal years in my 50s. And so I used that as the first chapter of the book. And I was off and running into this strange territory we call age. There are a lot of jokes about aging. There are a lot of how to age. There are books that even purport to find a cure for aging. And I don't think there's any one book that tells anybody how to age. There's my book. I tell you how I age, and maybe you can get some insights from reading my book, which is what I hope. I kind of, God bless the people who do all the how-to books. They're necessary, and people get a lot of good out of them. But for me, I get more insight and more help if I can hear somebody else talk about an experience, and I can relate to it. And so that's the way I write. That's what my book is about. Going through the grieving process, going through the rebuilding of a life, and coming out feeling really wonderful. I have a new life now. Not that I've forgotten John, but John has gone, and I'm here, and I'm living, and that's what is important, I think. So that was my second book, by the way. My first book is a book that's also about my experiences. Again, it's like a self-help book, but it's also from my perspective, and you read it and you take what you relate to out of it. But then the second book, it's called Talking It Over, Understanding Sexual Diversity. And as the mother of a gay son, I had an agenda in writing that book. And my agenda was to help people understand that gay, lesbian, transgendered, bisexual, diverse people need acceptance, not tolerance, acceptance and respect and safety for whomever they are. So I hope to contribute something to that. So I used my experience as the mother of a gay son to talk about what it is to be gay. I don't know myself what it is to be gay, but I know what I can see of it, having a gay son and having gone through a lot of homophobia and fear. The fact that he chose a partner who had traveled around a lot, and was back in the times, the early AIDS epidemic, and unfortunately Garrett was infected. But Garrett was quite a character. He to the day he died, he denied that he had AIDS. So it made quite a story to tell Steve and his story and my story around that particular issue. And in the book, I talk about things like learning how to relate in one chapter, and then I put in columns on relating. Or I talk about homophobia in another chapter, and then I put in columns about homophobia. So the book is a mixture of narrative and columns. It has helped a lot of people in its time, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback about it. Still being sold, by the way. There are many complicated issues in aging. Sometimes I hear about things like I heard from a gentleman who drives for a Christian ministry, drives elderly people to their appointments. And he generally likes to do this, except that he's got one old lady that really gives him a hard time. So I thought, it'd be fun to write a story about that. So I did. And this story I called Driving Ms. Betsy. Let me read it to you. Thomas simply did not want to do it. Yet, being a Southern gentleman whose mother raised him properly, he was nagged by the requirement that a gentleman does his duty no matter what. Here I am in my 80th year, and my mother is still running my life, he thought. The sigh was especially deep. Why did the Christian Services of Dallas pick him to drive the most irritating, thoughtless, crazy old witch to her dental appointment? The last time he took her, she drove him up a wall, telling him exactly where to go, and then getting them lost, how to drive, triggering a mini anxiety attack in both of them, and where to park. She insisted on a handicap space, even though she had no plaque with her. He did have his, however. An ordinary parking space was even closer, but she wouldn't hear of parking there. The memory of it all still stung. They'll give you a ticket quicker than a hen lays an egg, she had declared, absolutely certain of her position. Now, Miss Betsy, he called her Ms., knowing she was annoyed by the term. Payback comes in small packages sometimes. There's no sign there saying parking is restricted. If I pull in, it'll make it easier for you and me to... You listen to me, old man, she interrupted. I know you will get a ticket in that very spot, because that's where my last driver got a ticket. I told her not to park there. It's a delivery space. Anybody can see that. Why else is it open? She might have added dummy, he thought with grim patience. But there's no sign. Park where I told you. Oh, damn. I forgot my handicap plaque. You have yours? Of course. Thomas pulled into the space indicated. Now hold on, Miss Betsy. Don't open your door just yet. I have to get your walker out of the trunk. But the fearless old bat paid him not the slightest bit of attention. Already she'd stepped out onto the concrete surface of the parking lot, perilously holding only the car door handle for balance. She'll fall on her face one of these days, but not on my watch, he told himself, and jumped out of his side of the car so quickly he banged his leg on the heavy door. Ouch! What are you waiting for? I need my walker, you know. I know. Give me a minute, will you? You don't have to get all sassy on me. Just hurry up. I can't stand here forever. Still wincing from the pain in his leg, he brought her the walker. Now we have to go up in the elevator. I can't take this big honking thing up the escalator, you know. It's on the 5th floor. That's not what I remember. Dr. White's office is on the 7th floor. Oh, no. That's Brian White's office. I'm going to Charlie White. You changed dentist? No. You have a faulty memory, that's all. Pardon? He was taken aback by the insult, but she took it as an apology to her. That's okay, honey. You've reached the age where such stuff happens. Myself, I'm lucky. Memory like an elephant. He wanted to scream at her, but didn't. In his sweetest, most southerly gentleman's drawl, he cooed, Now isn't that a blessing? Off the elevator on the 5th floor, they found a suite of elegant offices with doctors' names and specialties. She opened one which indeed had Charlie White's name on it, but underneath was the clear announcement that he was a gynecologist. "I don't think you want this one, Miss Betsy," he told her. "Let's just see if they have my name on the appointment list. I'm sure this is my dentist. They got his designation wrong on the door, that's all. Gynecologist, can you imagine?" He squirmed while she confronted, then argued with the receptionist. "But I have an appointment with Dr. White." "No, ma'am, I'm sorry, you don't." The receptionist stared at the aged woman and frowned. "Are you sure you want to see a gynecologist?" Betsy scowled at the young woman. "No need to get sarcastic with me, young lady." Thomas blushed, embarrassed on so many levels. "I'm sorry," he managed to say. "I'm pretty sure we are in the wrong office. Miss Betsy needs to see her dentist." "Oh, you must mean Dr. Brian White. He's on the 7th floor." Thomas took the old woman's arm and tried to guide her to the door. "Leave me be," she scowled at him now. "I can walk, you know." Okay, he said, throwing his arms in the air. The receptionist smiled encouragingly at him. He felt a bit better. An ally. Miss Betsy was uncharacteristically silent when they got off the elevator at the 7th floor. They moved into the office of Brian White, DDS, where Thomas felt a moment of triumph. Charlie, indeed. The receptionist greeted her in a manner Thomas perceived as distinctly wary. "Oh, hi, Mrs. Connor. We'll be with you shortly. Please have a seat." "Are you sure you have me in your appointment book, miss? I remember seeing Dr. Charlie White last time. Did Dr. White change his first name?" Thomas groaned, but not so loudly that either of them heard. Yes, Mrs. Connor. Dr. White did change his name since you saw him. Here, I'll give you a new card so you can get used to his new first name." As Miss Betsy studied the card, the receptionist gave a quick wink to Thomas, who was reveling in his vindication. Southern gentleman or no, I'm going to rub it in a little on the way home, he decided, excited at the prospect of taking revenge, small though it be. He settled the old woman in a seat in the waiting room, gave her a magazine, and then casually strolled back to the rack, avoiding the necessity to sit beside her. He lingered there, fingering each of the magazines. None of them particularly interested him, but he stayed there, hoping she'd be called inside so he could sit down by himself and relax. His legs still hurt him. No such luck. "Thomas, come sit down," she called, while patting the seat of the chair beside her. "I need someone to talk to." He partially obeyed, coming to a standstill beside her chair. "Don't you like the magazine I gave you?" "I left my reading glasses at home. Come, sit down." He did so reluctantly. "What do you want to talk about?" he asked, adding, "I don't know you very well." "Ain't that the truth, honey?" She laughed. "You're a nervous type, aren't you? I could tell by the way you've been acting, unsure of yourself. I told you we needed to get to the 7th floor, but you pressed that 5th floor button in the elevator." Thomas was thunderstruck. What was this drivel coming out of her now? "Aw, don't blush," she soothed, misreading the red gall rising in Thomas's features. "People make mistakes. Then doctors go and change their names. I think they do that, just hoping to confuse us, don't you?" She really is crazy, Thomas thought. He didn't know what to say. And now he was angry at himself for being pissed at a crazy woman. Where the hell is her family? They should be taking care of this, not me. He temporized, trying to think of an answer adequately enough not to require an insincere affirmation from him. "I'm not sure what doctors do these days or why they do what they do," he finally said. She was quiet then. The dental assistant opened the door to the inner office spaces, and Miss Betsy was helped in. Thomas took a deep breath. A half hour later she emerged. a smile on her face and a new appointment card in her hand. "I'll come back next week," she said. "I'll hope you drive me, Thomas." "We'll see," he said. "You know, my daughter wants to take me to these appointments, but I tell her no need. Christian Services has the nicest volunteers who help me." "Your daughter offered to take you?" The new information astounded Thomas. "Yes, but don't tell her this. I just don't like to go with her. She's so bossy, thinks she knows everything. She's the one who got the ticket last time. Too smart to park where I told her to park. She won't listen to anything I tell her. Children, grown children." She shook her head in disgust. Taking Thomas's arm then, she let herself be guided toward the elevator and down to the parking lot. "You know, Thomas, you are quite good at taking care of us old women. That's why I ask for you every time I call Christian Services." Before he could answer, Miss Betsy shifted her gaze to the car and exclaimed, "Oh, look, there's something under the windshield." Thomas groaned. It was a parking ticket. He had forgotten to put up the handicap plaque after all. "I'm sorry you got a ticket," Miss Betsy crooned. "You should be more careful and check before you get out of the car." Such was the chaos of that last time Thomas drove Miss Betsy that he promised himself never again would he drive that woman anywhere. When the telephone rang, his first thought was, "What now?" He groaned inaudibly as he heard himself say to the volunteer scheduler at Christian Services, "Of course. What time? I'll be happy to drive Miss Betsy to her dentist again." After all, a Southern gentleman honors his commitments. It's a good illustration on how stories occur to me. This friend of mine who I've known for a bit lives in another state, and he does drive people to their appointments. And he was telling me about this crotchety old lady, and I was laughing at his description. And so I decided to make up my own crotchety old lady from what he had described. And that's where that story came from. That's what happens in a lot of writing. After all, we write from our experiences. And if we write fiction, we're free to bend those experiences in any way, shape, or form that we want. I usually write nonfiction, and so I can't bend those stories. I have to be honest and upfront, and writing from my perspective as much as I know my perspective. I don't think that writers always write the truth. They write the truth that is real to them. And that is what I tend to do in my writing. It's my readers, of course, who keep me honest, and that's why I like to run my pieces by people who can critique them properly. In order to do that, I've joined a very wonderful organization called Redwood Writers. It's a branch of the California Writers Club. In fact, the largest branch of the California Writers Club. We have about 250 members now. And the club was founded over 100 years ago by Jack London and John Muir. So it feels really neat to be associated with those names. Anyway, when I joined the club, I found a lot of people there like me who love to write and who share their stories. And so our motto is writers helping writers. And it really is a club that does that for writers. I joined a critique group, and I can take a writing like Driving Miss Betsy to the critique group. If they find something in it, they tell me about it, and it improves my writing when I do that. Every piece that we write, no matter how good, can be improved. But of course, you reach a point where you try you have to say, this is it. Like in my book, okay, this is when it was finally polished by myself and a man who had helped me publish my first book. I said, okay, this is it. This is the final version of it, and we're going to go with it. And it turned out okay. When you read it, if you find something in it that I have, if you find any mistakes in it, let me know, because I haven't found any yet. But there's bound to be something that I overlooked. I know that in today's world, most writers publish their own work, which is not such a new phenomenon. Writers like Ben Franklin used to publish his own work. I think Charles Dickens did in his time. That was a way of getting the word out. I thought maybe I was done writing books with my second book, but then I have kind of met someone online, and though I have not met him in person, and I may never meet him in person because he does have a health issue, and I do too. So traveling is not easy for each of us, but we're taking it one day at a time. And I've known him for 9 months now, and I kind of fallen in love with him, and he with me, and it's a really nice feeling to have love come back into my life at this age. It's very pleasant to be 77 and still feel those feelings, and still feel like, yeah, life does offer you these things, and you need to reach out and grab hold of them. So then I thought, maybe the whole reason for this relationship is, I got that story driving Miss Betsy out of my relationship with this gentleman. Maybe the whole reason is for me to write a novel about this. Elderly people meet one another on the internet. We're keeping up with the young ones too. We don't need our eHarmony. We can find each other in our game rooms, was where I found him. Playing bridge, by the way. It's funny how bridge is kind of a metaphor or a motivator or whatever in my life, but bridge is there. So I'm writing this book and this novel, and I think it's going to take me a year or more to get it together. And I have a working title right now. I call it Twilight Zone, because that's where we are, in the Twilight Zone. And it's a delightful place to be. The sun hasn't quite set. The shadows of the night are coming in. And yet you feel it's okay. It's okay to enjoy a little bit of fun before you sleep.